This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. We're coming to you live from Charles Equipment Energy Systems in Des Plaines, part of our fourth annual AM 560 Signature Bank Business Tour. And
wow, they brought in that breakfast dish that is quite spectacular. I've never tasted anything like this. And I'm not a foodie by any means, but I like coming to Charles Equipment Energy Systems for this.
Yeah, you wouldn't think guys that are in industrial energy systems would make such a good breakfast, but I'll tell you, they're multi-talented. It's good stuff. We're also in a bit of mourning today over, obviously, the death of King Kong Bundy.
Luke Perry.
Well, and Luke Perry, too. It
yes.
Depends on your perspective if you grew up watching wrestling or you grew up watching 90210.
I have 27
Or we're
Luke
watching
Perry
90210 in your 20s, as the case may be,
well, no,
as they were pretending to be in high school while in their 30s.
No, well, I was in the early or late 90s when we started watching 90210 at our sorority, all right?
Yeah.
It was must-see television.
All right, well, we'll get to all of that TMZ business a little bit later. We've got to do what we're supposed to do here, which is politics and policy and news. And Jared Naylor, who is the Democrat from New York, chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, after his rather interesting interview with Stephanopoulos on Sunday, where he is sure the president obstructed justice, but he doesn't have any evidence, so he's working on the evidence piece. And his decision to not pursue impeachment at this time is not political, but the only reason he's not doing it is because the landscape doesn't provide for it politically. So if you can get past those contradictions, you can get to more of Jared Naylor, and he was at it again yesterday.
Yeah, and talking about a dictatorship and how we have to stop it.
You've had 2 years of sustained attacks by an administration of the nature that we haven't seen probably in a century or more, against the free press, against the courts, against the law enforcement administrations, against freedom of speech. Yeah. We now see allegations that the president is trying to get the Justice Department to intervene in a merger dispute.
I'm going to ask you about that
because he doesn't like news coverage. All of this would be illegitimate if it's true. We have to make sure as to what is true and what is not true, and maybe come up with legislative limits on power, or maybe do other things. But we have to make sure that this is not a dictatorship and that the rule of law is respected.
Oh,
Yes.
he's just like Maduro. Okay.
If you think that Jared Naylor is the only thing standing between us and lawlessness, then you're not paying very close attention to what's happening inside the Beltway. For more on this topic and others, we're pleased to be joined by Rich Lowry. He is, of course, the editor of National Review, and he's also a Fox News contributor. His book, Lincoln Unbound, as well. Rich, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So one thing I saw you say that I wanted you to develop a little bit more for our listeners was by saying Democrats like Naylor saying we're a long way from impeachment, what they're suggesting is that we're on the road to impeachment.
Yeah, I don't even know whether he's doing it consciously, but just that's where the logic leads. If you think he's already guilty of crimes, which basically Nadler does, he seems pretty emphatic that he believes the president has obstructed justice. And if you believe he's a dictator, taking towards a dictatorship and basically the worst human being that's ever been president of the United States, what's the case not for impeaching him? And even if Nadler and Nancy Pelosi, even if they aren't thinking that way, you can be guaranteed that their basis, and this is why I thought all along they'd end up impeaching him. I don't think they're going to be, at the end of the day, be able to resist their own base. And even if they don't want to, even if they think it would be a political mistake, even if it'd be better just to continue hassling him with all sorts of investigations, I think they're going to impeach him.
So you think the Democrats are after the president rather than going after the truth?
Well, yeah. I mean, there's been this fantasy since November 2016 that Trump could be somehow leveraged out of office before serving his full term, and whether it was the Electoral College coup or the 25th Amendment, or there's going to be proved to be a Russian spy or whatever, or impeachment, that they could somehow make him go. So, look, I mean, they'll have lots of witnesses, and I'm assuming they'll dig up some more embarrassing information because, you look at Michael Cohen's testimony, there's a lot of embarrassing stuff there. It's just a question of whether it rises to the level of impeachment, one, and two, even if you think it does, do you really think you're going to convict him in the Senate? And if you're not going to do that, as we learned in the 1990s, you can impeach a president out of the House, but it just serves as kind of a giant act of censure because if you don't have 2/3 of the votes in the Senate, he's not going anywhere.
What do you think of the leading lights of the left running for president, and throw in Ocasio-Cortez as well, who's sort of driving the discussion on their side, talking about reparations, talking about the Green New Deal, talking about now Kamala Harris decriminalization of prostitution, in addition to the 44 of 47 senators, including all the presidential aspirants, voting to block a ban on infanticide from coming to the Senate floor, Ben Sass's bill. Are they playing right into President Trump's freedom versus socialism hand that he outlined on Saturday at CPAC?
Absolutely. And if Trump is reelected, these last 3 months will be the start of his victory, clearly, and just how far left the Democrats have lurched. And I find all these policies reprehensible. I find this general drift noxious. But if you're progressive, you can say that you can make a case for someone like AOC, like pushing the envelope on a bunch of stuff. What I've found astonishing, though, is that you've had supposedly plausible presidential candidates signing up for a lot of this stuff. Kamala Harris, as some people think on paper, is a front runner, signing up for the Bernie Sanders Medicare for All plan, and then being, astonishingly enough, honest about it on national TV, what it means, eliminating private insurance. You have a bunch of presidential contenders on the AOC Green New Deal. And these are just things that will not be readily defensible in a general election. Throw reparations in there as well. So this is a party that the Labour Party in the 1970s, I believe, in Britain had such a radical platform. It's been referred to as the longest political suicide note in history, and Democrats might be writing another one of those.
Well, and in addition to that, you have this Corbynism that's taken over a portion of the party, that same portion, frankly. And Representative Omar, her kind of apology tweet was barely complete before she's in hot water again over anti-Semitic remarks. And Rashida Tlaib, after castigating Mark Meadows as somehow a racist or engaged in racist acts during the Michael Cohen testimony. Now we find out she may have violated, and speaking of campaign finance law, which is they're very concerned about with respect to President Trump, now she may have violated campaign finance law by paying herself salary while she was a candidate out of her campaign fund.
Yeah, Omar, Tlaib, and AOC are the gifts that just keep on giving.
Yep.
And it doesn't matter what those 41 moderate Democrats who were the majority makers for the Democrats in the House think or say or do. These three are defining the party, and that is very bad for them. You begin to see, anonymous quotes in the paper from other House Democrats complaining about this, but it's a fact. And it's very bad for them and very good for Republicans and the cause of winning back the suburbs and reelecting the president.
Well, don't you think Congresswoman Omar should be removed from the Foreign Affairs Committee?
That seems crazy to me. Yeah, I don't know why
weird.
they put her. This is like the topic
Kinger.
This is a topic she has this kind of bugbear about, that she's most noxious about, that you're constantly rebuking her over. And then you give her a seat on the Foreign Affairs Committee so she can pursue this noxious obsession.
So before we declare President Trump the 2020 victor, there's some rough waters ahead for him, too, including right now with his declaration of an emergency at the border that at least 4 Republican senators aren't going to go along with. Now, of course, they probably won't have enough to override his veto, so that probably moves forward into the courts. But nonetheless, that just shows some dissension in the ranks. What is the trouble ahead for President Trump that you see that could most derail him and paper over what we've just described as besetting the Democrats?
Yeah, now, obviously, the problem he has is he's never widened out. right? He's been in this narrow band of support. It's kind of the same band that he used to get elected in 2016, so you could see it happening again, but it's a real narrow path, and it's probably not a majority path. Trump getting to 50% is probably really hard, but could he get to 47% and thread the needle in terms of the Electoral College again? Yes. So that's the big challenge for him. Unless something, there's some transformative event that changes his standing for better or worse, or the Democrats nominate someone who's such a disaster, it changes his standing for better, or someone who's so good it changes his standing for worse. But just sort of status quo where it is now, which is where it's been basically, for 3 years. He's like, he's a 40-50% maybe chance of getting reelected, but it's going to be a close call.
And we learned yesterday, Hillary's out, Eric Holder's out, Mark Cuban might run as an independent. Then
and Ann
Howard
Coulter's going to be
Schultz.
his running mate.
Oh, yeah.
Just like Sharknado.
Sharknado 3, Dan. But, I mean, if you have all those independents running, too, that obviously is going to help President Trump.
Probably. It's hard to say with certainty. I would just – my prediction on the Democratic side is just it's going to be – 2016 was wild, right? Both on the Democratic side and the Republican side, it's going to be even weirder and crazier. We don't know what we're in for. And my one takeaway from 2008 when we saw the rise of Obama and 2016 when we saw the rise of Trump is pay attention to crowd size. That really matters. And I thought Bernie's crowd out in your guys' neck of the woods was really impressive. I think Beto, even though a lot of us have kind of mocked and dismissed him, if he gets in, he's going to build a big crowd. So pay attention to that.
All right. He is Rich Lowry. He's bad to the bone, as you heard from his ringtone. And he's also the editor of National Review. Fox News contributor. Rich, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
The more you listen, the more you'll know. This is Chicago's Morning Answer. Morning Answer.